Okay, so I'm heading out to Blue Label Racing to pick up the Mini Cooper. Some of the repair work has been done, but apparently there's a list of other repairs. So let's go talk to Collin and we'll see what needs to be done. Okay, just got to Blue Label Racing. Time to pick up the Mini Cooper. Check out some of these cars that are here. There's a Lotus, Souped Up Mini. There's 11. And let's see where Collin's at. Working on... Hey, how are you?
Howdy.
So, I guess you have some updates for me and the Mini Cooper?
Yes.
Okay, I'm kind of scared. What do we have?
Well, probably a little more than you were anticipating, but
okay,
not anything we can't work through over time.
All right, so what should we get started with here?
So you initially brought it in to me just to look over the whole thing, do some maintenance on it. We did an oil change and resolved the ball joint issue.
Yes.
That was worn in the front. And it does feel quite a bit better driving since we've done that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But like I said, the list does go on. You also told me you knew about the supercharger noise.
Yeah, so it had been rebuilt once, but I guess you hear some things going on with it.
Yeah. You can stick a scope down in there onto the supercharger and listen to it, and you can hear those bearings whirring around and making kind of that like angry cat noise.
Okay. Oh.
So that at some point is going to need resolving before it actually eats itself and stops providing you cooling power. That would be kind of catastrophic.
Okay, because you said the water pump is attached to the supercharger.
Yeah, it's powered off the end of the supercharger. So if the supercharger stops spinning, your water pump also stops spinning.
Okay, all right.
It's a very compact design.
Okay, well that is a little scary. What else do you have for me?
Well, the list I made up on my phone to send you of recommendations was about 16 bullet points long. So that's one of them. The second one is unfortunately even a little bit bigger of a deal than that. There was a noise that I initially thought was an engine knock.
Okay.
Which isn't that.
That's good.
It's probably close to just about as expensive because it's actually an internal transmission noise.
Okay.
So with the car running at idle, if you come around the front and stick that same scope that I listen with down onto the transmission, you can hear a knocking noise as it goes around. And usually I would attribute that to something like a throwout bearing. But when you push the clutch in, it goes away.
Okay.
And when you let it out, it comes back. And it kind of sounds a little different every time you let it out and push it back in. So
I've kind of noticed that when I'm sitting at stoplights.
Most likely what that's going to be is a bearing on the input shaft in the transmission.
Okay.
Which is one, $20, $30 bearing, but it's probably about 15 hours worth of labor to get that in and out, get it replaced, and put it back in.
Yikes. Okay, so another bearing.
Two tiny little bearings, probably $100 in parts, but 30 hours worth of labor to do everything.
Yikes. Okay.
We can keep going though.
Yeah. So, okay, sure.
Also under the hood, there are quite a few oil leaks. Minis are kind of notorious for this as they age.
Yep.
The valve cover gasket around top is leaking. The oil pan gasket at the bottom is leaking. You've noticed drips in your driveway.
Yes. I've seen the drips. I have a little carpet square underneath to keep things clean.
Yeah. The most predominant one is the oil filter housing gasket, which lies at the back of the block and it runs down over the passenger CV axle. That one is dripping at a rate that leaves, I've actually got a couple spots here in the shop where I've parked it since you've been away.
Oh no, so I've made your shop dirty.
It's okay. We've got Big Matt and it's plenty. So I'll get that cleaned up. That's no worry.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Around the back in here, your shocks are probably the original ones that the car came with when it was new.
Yeah, probably so.
Both of these are blown and leaking.
Oh.
So as you're going over bumps, the car doesn't have the support it needs to rebound, and it's kind of loosey-goosey.
Oh, geez.
In the turns, which is not ideal.
I have noticed whenever anybody sits in the back, it really compresses a lot. It looks like it's almost riding on the wheel.
Yeah, and that especially doesn't help having those blown shocks, because with more weight in the back over bumps and through turns, it's just not going to handle the way it's supposed to.
Okay. That's not as scary as the other two, though. So that's
not as scary as the other two. That's kind of just basic maintenance and repairs as you go along. And those really don't take a whole lot of time to get out.
Okay.
Those are about 3 bolts and some wiring, and they just pull right out. But it is some labor getting the shock apart and moving the spring over to the new shock. You have to do an alignment after that, which actually leads me into the next thing.
Okay.
I tried to do just an eyeball alignment for you, because after we did the ball joint, the steering wheel was off to the right.
Yep.
It was pretty far to the right.
That's my biggest pet peeve, is having a crooked steering wheel.
Me too. It bugs me too. I tried to resolve that for you, but both of the front tie rods are C's. Neither of them adjust. So we would have to do that before we do an alignment.
Okay.
And if you're going to do an alignment, we better do the shocks too.
Yep. So so it's adding up, but it's still not as scary as the first 2 bearings.
Yeah.
But that all seems, I guess, just like I said, less scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
You told me about the flooding that happened.
Yes.
When the car was close to noon.
The sunroof was open. They're changing out the fuel pump, and the car was in Lake Tahoe, and a pipe burst and filled the car with water. So.
Really unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
The lights that you have on the dash, there's a seatbelt light and an airbag light.
Okay.
Those are actually both related, and it's not any one specific airbag or seatbelt causing the issue. It's actually that the module that runs the airbags, that powers the airbags, that makes them go off, is dead.
So if I get in an accident...
At the moment, if you get in an accident, you're kind of on your own.
Okay. So that's almost as scary as the bearings.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of at my own risk now.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that replaceable? You can put a new one in?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Slap a new one in there, program it, good to go.
Okay.
Yep.
That might be lower on the list than the other 2.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me reference my list here. There's 2 engine mounts that need replacing. A passenger upper mount, the one that's actually attached to the motor. That one is common on first gens for going out. It's ruptured. It's leaked all its hydraulic fluid out, and it's kind of sitting a little lower than it's supposed to.
Okay.
Also, the lower mount, the dog bone that controls the torquing of the motor as it rocks back and forth, that one is soaked in oil from the oil filter housing leak.
Okay.
So all the rubber's kind of blown up and expanded, and it's not doing its job anymore.
Okay.
And that's 2 of the 3 drivetrain mounts altogether holding everything in aren't doing their job properly. So the motor's kind of free to just rock around.
It vibrates a lot.
There's a lot of vibration.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, wow. All right. So what's next?
You also mentioned to me that there was an O2 sensor fault occasionally.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not an O2 sensor.
Okay.
Which is good.
That's
However, the exhaust manifold.
Okay.
So the exhaust manifold has a crack in it somewhere underneath a layer of shielding. So I can't really see where it is, but I can hear where it is.
Okay.
And it's between the 2 O2 sensors.
So it sounds like a lot of stuff on the back of the engine.
Yeah. So what's happening is it's actually letting air that's gone through the engine out, and it's letting air from the outside come in at that point in the middle of the exhaust header between the O2 sensors, and it's actually confusing it because it's not seeing a pure stream of what's gone through the engine. Okay. So the car's logic is saying
the mixture's not right. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying that I had a MagnaFlow catback exhaust system.
Yeah.
Where does this crack start in relation to that? Is it
all the way at the front? There's the 4 runners that merge, and right after the merge, it's at the primary cap. There's that crack in the manifold, and it's leaking air in and out, and it just can't make sense of it. So what that does is it changes the air-fuel mixture that the car sends into the engine, because it's reading what it thinks is what's coming from the engine. It's adjusting for it, and it's adjusting for it rapidly all the time. and it's probably getting you pretty bad gas mileage.
You know what? Even with that,
Yeah.
it still gets better gas mileage than my Mercedes.
Oh, that I would expect.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I hope so. I hope so. But it's also robbing you a little bit of power.
Yeah. Oh,
Because it's not able to find that perfect stoichiometric ratio.
well, I'll look at
But
that.
I will admit, that exhaust does sound great.
Okay, well, we'll start it up here in a little bit so everybody can hear it.
Talking about more goodies that you got on the car, these Stop Tech brakes are very impressive looking, but they're actually all worn out. There's hardly any pad left on the front on either of these 4 pads.
Okay.
And the rotors have a lip developing on them. So ideally, I'd like to put pads and rotors on it. But we both kind of tried to look up those parts.
Yeah, it's really hard. They make too many different models. I'll have to
couldn't
try to find a receipt or
part
something.
numbers, couldn't find. We might just have to do it based on pictures, or we'll reach out to them and see if they can visually identify it, because they.
Okay. All right.
But
Can the rotor be turned?
so this is a 2-piece designed rotor. It's meant to be a little lighter and save you a little bit of cost when you replace it. There's actually bolts on the hat, and you just take the braking surface off as a ring and then replace it.
Okay.
So it's a little more labor, but it's designed to be lighter and maybe cool a little bit better.
Okay.
Who knows how old that kid is, though?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when he got it, but hopefully we can, like I said, find a receipt or something like that that will give us the part number, and maybe that'll reveal the date too.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
You're saying something about it, the calipers closing.
Yeah. So on the passenger side, the pad that's worn down the most, the design of this caliper at the front, if you're looking at the car like this, the spot where you would slide the pads out, there's like a bridge on the front of it that the spring attaches to.
Yeah.
And the bridge in the middle actually prevents the pad from squeezing in all the way when it gets really worn down. So it's only got about 1 millimeter of pad left. And that's the point where it starts to touch that bridge. And it actually touches the bridge before it wears the pad all the way down.
Okay.
So it's maybe a rotor saving measure, but at the same time, if it's not pressing on the rotor, it's not providing you braking force.
So at some point I just won't be able to stop.
At some point, that pad will stop participating.
Okay.
And you'll be relying on the other 3. So
Wild. Okay, well,
stuff.
you found some we talked through some of the things that were broken and need to be fixed, but you also found some other goodies that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
Yeah, this honestly is a really cool car. It's not your just average run-of-the-mill R53. Somebody at some point had this, did a lot of stuff to it, and loved it. Because A, the wheels.
Yep.
B, the big brakes. C, the exhaust. We already talked about that. D, it's got front and rear sway bars added to it. The rear is, in my mind, the essential Mini handling upgrade. Like, if anybody's going to buy one of these and wants to make it more fun, you put a big rear sway bar on it.
This one has it.
also has
Okay.
a big front sway bar. So somebody was serious about reducing roll.
Yes.
It's a white line kit, front and rear. So that was very cool to see.
Nice.
You've also got stainless steel braided brake lines all the way around.
Okay. Oh, all the way around. Nice.
Yeah. Lots of really cool stuff.
It was my stepdad's, and he bought it new in 2004. And like you were saying, he just loved on it and did as many upgrades as he could to it. So I'm excited, and I want to keep it going. And that's why I really appreciate you making that list for me of all those things that need to be worked on. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. This is why I'm here. I'm a Mini nut at heart, and as long as I can help you keep it on the road in whatever condition it's in, that's what matters to me, is that you keep coming back and driving it and enjoying it.
Sweet. All right. Well, I think it's time to start it up.
I also gave you
a
little present.
Okay.
We got a vinyl cutter recently, and we started making our own.
Oh, sweet.
Stickers.
Look
So
at that.
There's that in your passenger seat. You can stick that on wherever you'd like to.
Okay. I'll do it on the other side of the window to balance out the other stickers I have on there.
Right. Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.